What's up, everybody? Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Off the Bench. As a lot of you may know, we record our podcast episodes very early Monday afternoon, well before Monday Night Football is even close to kicking off, which means we recorded this episode before the Damar Hamlin incident. We just wanted to make it very clear that our thoughts and prayers are with Damar and his family. It's easily one of the scariest things I've ever seen happen on a football field. The only positive I could say is watching the way the football community came together to support him, donate to his charity has been awesome to see, but obviously, a very, very sad and scary thing that we saw happen in the early minutes of Monday Night Football. So just wanted to make it clear that's the reason that, we don't talk about Damar throughout the podcast episode. It hadn't happened yet, and any mentions of the Bills or the Bengals as far as playoff scenarios are concerned, just keep that in mind that we didn't know that this was going to happen. So we understand if, you're not in the mood to hear about normal football conversation on a day like this, totally get it. But if you do want some sort of distraction from, sort of the scariness of this whole tragedy, hey, feel free to listen. The podcast is here for you. If not, we'll be back next week just as we always are. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being loyal followers and listeners of the podcast. We appreciate you. And talk to you soon. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Off the Bench after Week 17. I am Brandon Carney alongside Maddie Kroll. Christmas season is officially over. We're in the new year. And Maddie, you start your new year off well? You do anything exciting for New Year's?
I always like to kind of start my New Year's off a little bit relaxing. I like to get up early New Year's Day and go out and get something done so that way I start the year off accomplished. So I'm not a big going out person, but I did ring in the new year very relaxing, and it was honestly needed. How was your New Year experience?
It was good. It was very low key. However, one thing I will say, quick story here. So I am not one to quickly take down Christmas decorations when we hit the new year or when Christmas passes, right? We normally leave it up for a little bit. We love the season. Let it ride a little bit into January. For the last month or so, I have been dealing with really, really bad, irritated red eyes. Like I've been getting this rash on my neck. You kind of see it here if you're watching visually. It's been bad. And I thought, right, that it was winter weather. I just moved to a new climate. It's very dry out here in Denver. This has happened to me one time before in the past. It was wintertime when it happened then too. We come to the realization, I am allergic to our Christmas tree.
Oh no, the beautiful tree.
I have a pine tree allergy. And I thought, again, it's cold, it's winter, whatever, skin can get irritated. Last time this happened to me was 4 years ago. I was working at a news station. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep because I was working overnights. Mm-hmm. It's cold. I'm miserable. And my eyes were getting a little dry. I was like, okay, whatever, physical reaction to stress and cold. That's fine. I asked my mom, I was like, when's the last time we had a real Christmas tree? And she goes, 4 years ago. I'm like, got it. So we didn't realize until this year I am allergic to Christmas trees. Thankfully, the Leland spruce will be our savior in future years. It's a type of Christmas tree that's hypoallergenic, apparently. But we literally got rid of everything. We had a giant wreath. We had real garland in the house in every room. So I was basking in just allergen. We got rid of it last night. I am a million times better already. Like everything is fading away. My eyes haven't itched, nothing. So I felt so stupid. It's definitely less festive in here, but at least I'm ringing in the new year and I can see and I'm not upset about being itchy. So,
being itchy really ruins everything.
It's tough. So, that was a tough realization, but I'm glad there are some real Christmas trees we can turn to. But we could get into some football talk, I guess. As much as I want to talk about Christmas tree allergies, and I'm sure it's very riveting for you guys all to hear about. People honestly probably noticed the red eyes in some of my videos lately. Somebody actually asked if I've been doing makeup. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do makeup to make my eyes pink. That's what I want to do. I would do makeup to cover it up. My girlfriend has offered, and I was like, no, it's fine. So that's all right. We'll adjust. We'll figure it out.
Have you been doing makeup?
It's an absurd question. I was slightly offended, but that's all right. Before we get into playoff scenarios and such, we do want to say a quick rest in peace to Pro Football Hall of Famer Art McNally. McNally, known as the father of instant replay, and was the first game official to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He passed away today. If you're listening to this podcast, obviously you are. On Tuesday, he passed away yesterday. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to him and, prayers up for his family and friends because, you never want to see that sad day, but definitely left his mark on the game of football for sure.
Absolutely.
Father of instant replay. Where would we be without that? There'd be a lot more angry fans these days. I could tell you that much, because sometimes we see stuff that we're like, how did the ref miss that in real time? And then the cameras are like, oh, sorry, our bad. You're right. All right, so we are heading into week 18. Finally, some of these playoff scenarios are revealing themselves, right? Like there's way too much going on if you are trying to look at this, last week, the week before. So we're going to get into sort of the playoff scenarios for each of these teams who are fighting for wild cards. But before we do that, I just wanted to give sort of an overall look at everything. So in the AFC, the teams that have clinched the playoffs to this point, the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Chargers. As of this week, the Jets and Raiders are newly eliminated. And the teams that are fighting for the one wild card spot available in the AFC, because remember, somebody has to win the AFC South. Teams that are fighting for the one wild card spot are the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Steelers, and technically the Jaguars. If the Titans were to win against the Jaguars this week, the Jags actually could still get in as a wild card. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then this upcoming week's matchups for the AFC involving those teams, we've got the Patriots at the Bills, the Jets at the Dolphins, the Titans at the Jags, and the Browns at the Steelers. In the NFC, teams that have clinched, we've got 6 teams who have clinched over here. The Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, good for them, they got in. The Vikings, the Bucs, and the 49ers. Saints and Commanders are newly eliminated, and the teams fighting for the one wild card spot in the NFC are the Packers, the Lions, and the Seahawks. Those matchups this week, we have Lions at Packers, so that's going to be a big one. Then we've got Rams at Seahawks. So that's just a quick overarching view. If you guys are looking for, sort of the playoff scenarios for these teams to actually get in, we are going to go through them one by one here. So first and foremost, I want to give out a shout out, though, to the Giants. Like I just mentioned, defeated the Colts 38-10 to clinch a wild card spot. I think as we go through the season, we've kind of adjusted to the Giants being a playoff team, right? Like a team on the verge of the playoffs. They look good. But now that we're kind of at the point where they have clinched and we can look back just a little bit, man, no one expected them to be here. What a season for the New York Giants. Am I right?
For real, though. I mean, just their ability to bounce back in certain situations was phenomenal. How far do we actually expect them to go into the playoffs, though, is the real question.
It is an interesting question. One thing that stood out to me in this game, and it prompted me to look it up. So we saw Danny Dimes running all over the place against the Colts. 11 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, his mobility is not a joke. It's very real. As much as we like to meme him and remember, the time he tripped over his own feet on like that, what could have been a 70-yard touchdown run a couple years back, he's a legit runner. And in games where Daniel Jones has at least 10 rushing attempts, the Giants are 5-0-1. So they need to get this guy on the move. They need to design some runs for Daniel Jones, because when they do, they're winning games. And, I hate the stat where it's like, oh, whenever a running back gets 20 plus carries or whatever, that team wins all the time. Yeah, obviously, because game script is dictating that, if you're winning, you're going to be able to run more. It's not the same with the quarterback, because you're not running out clock with quarterback rushes. Quarterback rushes are not because you're winning. You can use those to win. And that's what's happening with Daniel Jones. The more mobile that they keep Danny Dimes, Vanilla Vic over here, the better they're going to be. And they could possibly put some upsets on some teams here in the NFC. So I've been very impressed with the Giants this year, and I don't see why they wouldn't keep him as mobile as possible. How do we expect them to fare in the playoffs? Realistically, it depends who they play against, right? So they're going to have an away game. It'll be against probably not. I'm going to just assume the Eagles are going to get the 1 seed. It seems like the most likely scenario here. The Giants are probably going to be playing at either, I don't know, Minnesota or Tampa or who am I missing? Forgetting a team here. The 49ers.
The 49ers. Most likely play the 49ers or the Vikings.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they fare against them. But look, they're ahead of schedule is the point here. I think this is more about the Giants looking ahead to next year because they found their coach. And in my opinion, they found their quarterback. So Daniel Jones is a guy that I was very, very skeptical on coming into the year, but he's played really well. And I just don't know what better option would emerge that would prompt the Giants to go away from Daniel Jones, as he's just looked so comfortable in the system now, again, running the ball as much as he has. So I feel like he's their guy, even though he's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2023. The Giants did not pick up his option before this season because, again, I think they were obviously skeptical as to his future in a Giants uniform, as was the most of the world before this season. But he's kind of proven people wrong, and I I expect them to stay with him. I mean, he got a standing ovation in their past game, this game this week. So what more could you really ask for from Danny Dimes?
A couple of months ago, whenever this conversation was brought up, I said, well, we're going to have to probably wait and see what they decide to do with Saquon, because Saquon's also off of his rookie contract, and they're going to have to decide what they're doing there. Obviously, we know that they're going to throw the money out at Saquon just because of the things that he's done this year. You kind of have to erase the bad thoughts about the injuries and everything else, because he did bounce back, and he is the main reason that the Giants have won multiple games this season. So you have that contract coming up. I think that if they keep Jones, it might be on like a franchise tag situation. I have a really hard time believing that they're just going to offer him the contract that's going to be, just an insane amount, because they're also, when you talk about quarterback contracts, it goes off of the minimum across the league, right? It's not, well, you were kind of an average player and you barely came up this year. No, it doesn't work like that. Agents are going to try to get the money for their players. So if they keep him, which I think that that's the best scenario, I think that they franchise tag him and then they just kind of see what happens next season. And maybe they try to see what they can do in the draft. Maybe it is a Brock Purdy situation later on.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, finding a guy like that is so tough, but we've seen it a few times now that it is a long shot possibility. I think Daniel Jones is an interesting case just because he's not a reset the market type of quarterback. Like, as you said, agents are going to try and get the most for their quarterbacks and for their guys, and Daniel Jones will probably get a number that you might look at a little bit sideways, but it's not a number that's going to, reset the market like Mahomes did, or like Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, those types of deals. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a multi-year deal, but we'll see what the Giants feel comfortable with. I mean, if they can win a playoff game or two, who knows? I just don't see another answer for them at the quarterback position outside of, throwing the absolute bag at like Lamar Jackson or something like that. So
right.
Their options are limited. Their options are limited, and I think Daniel Jones he's a good player for them, and he's proven a lot of people wrong this year, me included. So shout out to them. Giants are at least a year ahead of schedule here, and they finally have a head coach that, they won't have to run through their sixth head coach in the last 5 years this offseason. They can finally keep one around, so that's good. Yeah. Another team that has clinched in the NFC, mercifully, the NFC South has been decided. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeating the Panthers 30-24. Mike Evans going off for 10 catches, 207 yards, and 3 touchdowns. It's crazy because I saw coming into this week, like, Mike Evans has gone into the last couple of weeks, short of 1,000 yards a couple of times, and yet he always ends up getting it. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, he hasn't been consistent this year. This might be the year he finally falls short. And he says, you know what? I'm going to do it with one game to spare because I'm going to have the best game probably of his career. I haven't researched that, but I can't imagine he's had a game more productive than this in his NFL
career. The best game. Yeah.
So, nobody saw this coming, but the Bucs win, and now you've got the storyline officially in motion, something that people have dreaded for a while. Don't let Tom Brady in the playoffs. Don't do it. You never know what can happen. Well, Tom Brady's in the playoffs, and they're going to be hosting a playoff game in the first round, possibly against the Dallas Cowboys, a team that has shown to be vulnerable at times. Maddie, what do you expect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to do in the playoffs? Do they win a game? Do they win multiple games?
This is a bold take, but if the Bucs get Cowboys first round, I have a feeling that they're at least going to get one win. The Cowboys struggle with game management. We've watched this happen over 3 seasons now, and nothing has gotten better. In fact, in some instances, it's gotten worse. Dak is not consistent, and we've started to see him trail down. And the Bucs did this. We watched them do this last year, where they just came alive at the end of the season, and I think that a lot of that has to do with just Brady being Brady and him bringing in that leadership. He's been there before. He knows what to expect, and he knows how to get these guys prepared. So I would not be surprised if Tampa came in and beat the Cowboys. I do have a fun little fact for you, though. For the first time in franchise history, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can call themselves back-to-back division winners, which is dope, regardless of where the season goes from here. Because at the beginning of the season, when we were starting out, I would bet all my money against that fact. 100%. There's no way that the Bucs are going to come out and win this. And then here we are.
All it takes is getting Tom Brady. Who would have thought? But I'm with you in the sense that I think the Bucs and the Cowboys is a frightening matchup for Dallas. I'm going to look ahead though and say, when we're sitting here, if we're sitting here next week and that is the playoff matchup, I'm telling you right now, everybody and their mother is going to be picking the Bucs to upset the Cowboys in that game. literally everybody, because that's the storyline. The Cowboys are a team prone to choking, to not succeeding in the playoffs. Dak is tied for the league lead in interceptions with 14 with the recently benched Derek Carr, despite the fact that Dak Prescott missed 5 games with an injury. So he's being careless with the ball. And then you've got Tom Brady back in the playoffs. Everyone's going to pick that upset. And because of that, I won't if it comes down to that matchup. I think the Cowboys are going to be motivated enough off of that media just firestorm that I think they'll hold it strong. But it's going to be probably the most watched game of the first round if it comes to pass. So it'll be tough. Brady in the playoffs is something to genuinely be afraid of, despite all of the jokes about, the team is bad. So, like, should we really be afraid of him? Kinda. The answer is kinda. I don't know that they win a game, but they are relatively dangerous just for the fact of they have the GOAT. They still have the GOAT.
Yeah.
So Cowboys, watch out, or any other team that they end up playing. Look, hey, the Eagles could have to go to Tampa. It's not ruled out yet. So that would be quite a sight as well. Maybe the Cowboys can avoid them. Going on to the teams that are fighting for the wild card now. Packers and Vikings. Maddie, we get to sit here and bask in the Vikings finally looking a little closer to what we kind of thought they would. I still don't think this is the real Minnesota Vikings, because I think this is too far in the other direction now. They played so bad. Kirk Cousins looked awful. They suffered injuries to the O-line. So the Vikings had a horrific game. But this does make me feel a little bit better about my skepticism of the Vikings to this point, because it's like, this is the kind of performance I wouldn't be surprised if this was what happened to them in the playoffs, if they got bopped by like 20 points. It's just, this is the sort of inconsistency and vulnerability that this Vikings team has shown all year, and it finally showed up on the scoreboard.
Right. I think a big thing here is the Packers defense actually decided to come and play. As much crap as I've talked on them this season, they shut down Jefferson. That was the big thing. The other big thing is the way they utilize their defense. So you mentioned injuries to the offensive line. The biggest injury here to note was the right tackle position, because what happens in those zone defenses is you have to do slide protection, which leaves your right tackle one-on-one. And they just capitalized on that over and over and over again. I don't think that this is a true testament to where the Vikings fall on whether they are fake or not, whatever people want to say. They played an awful game, but I think a lot of it had to do with them not being able to step out of the injury zone on the offensive line. But no, you have to give credit where credit's due. The Packers defense stepped up, and to be able to shut down Jefferson 2 times is unbelievable. So the gritty was a little bit dirty, I will say. The gritty in his face. Did you see that? Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that. That was a little toxic, but I can't say I disliked
kind of liked it. Yeah.
Kind of great. But yeah, I mean, look, the O-line injuries are not something that are going to get better. Brian O'Neill has a significant calf injury per Kevin McConnell. McConnell, right? McConnell. I always get his name mixed up. Vikings head coach, Kevin. He said that it's a significant calf injury, so it's going to be something they're probably dealing with into the playoffs. And, this is not the time for these sort of injuries to happen. Like, on the O-line specifically, it's one of those injuries that especially casual fans may not realize even happened. And then you get to the playoffs, the team loses, and they're like, what just happened? This team was supposed to be good. So they're going to need to figure some things out on the O-line if they are going to actually make some noise in the playoffs. But on the flip side, you've got the Packers. So again, I wanted to mention every wild card scenario as we go through these teams. The Packers is very simple. Win and they're in, lose and they're out. That's it. They have to win their game against the Lions, which is officially going to be on Sunday Night Football, so that should be a good one. Crazy that we're sitting here even saying that, because the Packers were 3-7 at one point. I'm pretty sure you could go back and find a podcast episode where I mentioned about Aaron Rodgers, how he was like, as long as we're in contention, I'd like to keep playing. And I was like, well, you're not making the playoffs, so it doesn't matter. Sorry, didn't expect the Packers to rip off 5 in a row and for their defense to actually look really, really good. Their defense played well. One guy I want to shout out, though, because it is night and day how they performed since this guy showed himself. Keyshawn Nixon, kick returner, punt returner for the Packers. I had been yelling for weeks internally to my friends about Amari Rodgers, because one of my close friends is a Packers fan. And I'm like, why is Amari Rodgers still on this roster? Because every single game, it felt like he fumbled. He fumbled a punt return. He fumbled a kick return, something. And I'm like, you need to get at least a net neutral player at the return position, because this guy is killing you at least once every other game. And I didn't understand it. they finally did cut Amari Rodgers and picked up Keyshawn Nixon, who has been a beast. And I have a couple of stats here about Keyshawn that I pulled together. So Keyshawn took over kick return duties in week 6, now leads the NFL in kick returns of 40-plus yards, and leads in average kick return yards among players with at least 20 attempts. He has 30 yards per kick return attempt. He also took over punt return duties in week 10, so pulling double duty, and is now, since then, second in the league with 14.6 yards per attempt behind the Falcons' Avery Williams. If they had made this move sooner and to get this guy that can actually help them flip the field, I don't know where we'd be. The Packers probably wouldn't have ever gotten to that dire point of being 3-7 because that's how big of a difference Keyshawn makes. It's really, really impressive. It just felt like them sticking with Amari Rodgers felt to me like when you're playing Madden and you don't play it that often and you're playing and you realize somebody's like above somebody else on the depth chart and you're like, fuck it, I'll just leave him in. That's what it felt like the Packers did with Amari Rodgers for years. They were just like, whatever, we don't want to find anybody else. Finally, they reached a point where enough was enough. They bring in Keyshawn and it's been a different team. It's just been a drastically different team.
Literally a game changer, 100%. I think the other side of that is Aaron Rodgers is now invested in this team. They're good enough to where they're going to make the playoffs, so he's interested and motivated. I mean, the pump fake and run in for a touchdown, I was like, who are you? Yeah.
That's vintage.
Yeah. And then watching him in the post-game press conference, because, I love to watch Aaron Rodgers and talk shit on them. It was night and day difference. And I was just like, okay, well, now your guy is bought in, your leader of the team's bought in, and look how big of a difference that makes also. The Packers are rolling now, but if they get into the playoffs, I'm not sure how far they're going to be carried because there's a lot of good teams that have been consistent out there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, that'll be something to investigate when we get to that point. But as of right now, look, they look dangerous. They have a guy who's won back-to-back MVPs at the quarterback position, and he's still good. Like, he's still got something in the tank, and it's just a matter of, motivation with him. And it's fair to criticize him for potentially the lack of communication with his receivers earlier in the year. But talent-wise, Aaron Rodgers is still at least 99% of Aaron Rodgers, with the arm talent and the plays he can make. So he's there. Keyshawn Nixon, insane addition that he's been to this team. Just wow. I cannot believe we're sitting here saying this after they were 3-7 and just looked completely dead in the water. So shout out to the Packers. I believe they had like a 1% playoff chance back then. So Packers have a playoff shot. They will be going up against the Detroit Lions this week. The Lions defeated the Bears 41-10, so also an NFC North blowout that the Lions handed out to the Bears. The Lions' wildcard scenario is, first of all, they have to win, and then they also need the Seahawks to lose. So they need a little bit of help. But considering their game is on Sunday Night Football, not that this necessarily affects how hard they would play, but they will know whether they have a chance or not because the Seahawks game will have happened already. But they need to win. Seahawks need to lose. The Lions, I don't have a whole lot to say about them, Maddie, that we learned from this week because it's the same old for them, right? The offense is elite. We knew that. Jared Goff has been playing great football for weeks. And we talked about last week, we felt like it was just kind of a hiccup against the Panthers. It was a lose focus type of game, even though it's inexcusable to lose focus at this point in the season. It was just a blip on the radar, and it didn't seem like anything to kind of bank on. And, they go in, they blow out the Bears by 30 points, and they're back to being who we thought they were. So it should be a good one against the Packers.
Should be. I'm excited to see that defense roll on Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun one. And then also we've got the Seahawks defeating the Jets 23-6. So this is the final team competing for that wild card slot out of the NFC. The Seahawks wild card scenario is they need to win and they need the Lions to beat the Packers. The reason for that is the Seahawks hold the tiebreaker over the Lions. They will not hold it over the Packers. So the Seahawks, if they are 9-8 and the Packers are 9-8, Seahawks are 9-8 and the Lions are 9-8. Seahawks will get it. So that's what they need. Geno Smith, though, this week, eliminating the Jets from playoff contention, which I find very funny because he did that many times several years ago, except he was on the Jets. So now he's doing it from the other sideline. And I'm sure it's got to be pretty vindicating for him, being on a team back then that was not helping him succeed. And he wasn't helping himself either. I think it's taken a lot of time and patience to help Geno Smith mature and become this very, very good quarterback that we've seen for most of this year. But now he gets to eliminate his old team. And the Seahawks, Seahawks are 5-1 in games where Kenneth Walker has at least 90 rushing yards. Their only loss in that scenario was last week versus Kansas City when they didn't have Tyler Lockett. So what this tells me is when the Seahawks are at full strength and they can get their run game going, they are a dangerous team. Like, this is the team that I don't want to say is – I'll say they're the most interesting one to me of the three if they were to get in the playoffs, because I feel like they are just very sneaky good, don't necessarily have – the glaring weaknesses that the Packers and Lions do at times. Like, the Lions defense just kind of falls asleep at points, and the Packers, we've just seen inconsistency on the offensive side of the ball. The Seahawks are such an interesting team to me that I do kind of hope they get in, because they, for a while, looked like they could win the NFC West, then got hit by injuries, and then now they're fighting for the wild card. But this is where we're at with them, and I hope to see them in the playoffs.
Really? I would have thought you'd go with the Lions. Who you want to see?
The Lions, the fan in me wants the Lions because I want to be able to root for them. I like the Lions more as a football team, but I think the Seahawks are just more of a low-key, legitimately dangerous playoff team that you don't want to see. Like, the Seahawks feel like not like a Bengals from last year, but sort of in that vein where it's like they're a damn good team that I would not be surprised to see like make the NFC Championship game. If they were to win it and go to the Super Bowl, then yeah, we're talking this is getting crazy. But if they can put together a fully healthy Seahawks team, I don't see why they couldn't make the run. The only thing going against their favor right now is linebacker Jordan Brooks does look to be done for the year with, I believe it's an ACL. So that's going to be a massive hit to their defense, a defense that has been overperforming for most of the year. They retooled it through the draft. But Jordan Brooks, a major, major piece that they won't have. So I don't know if this is going to come to pass with them making the playoffs and making noise, but I hope it does.
I feel you.
And then finally, we've got the ultimate question. Maddie, who do you think gets in? So I said who I would like to get in. Who do you think gets in out of the Packers, the Lions, and the Seahawks in the NFC? One playoff spot up for grabs.
Man, this is tough. I'm with you. I would much rather prefer to see the Lions or the Seahawks in. I would prefer to see the Lions in. Realistically, I think the Packers squeeze in there.
I do too.
I think that Aaron Rodgers' playoff time levels up, and I just think that it's the easiest route in. You're not worried about another team winning or losing, and I think that they're going to go out there and do what needs to be done just to win.
They're hot at the right time, and I mean that matters, and I agree. So I think it's funny I kind of hit on the Lions and the Seahawks, the reasons I would like to see them in, and ultimately they are not the team that I'm predicting to get in. I'm also going to predict the Packers get in and get that 7 seed and see if they can make some noise once they get in. On the AFC side, so we've got wild card scenarios for these teams as well. First, we'll start with the Patriots. My New England Patriots, against all odds, are alive and controlling their own destiny as we head into Week 18, defeating the Dolphins 23-21. Kind of dodged a bullet, not having to face Tua. Even got to face Skylar Thompson for portions of that game because of Teddy Bridgewater getting hurt. But the Patriots wildcard scenario, they actually have two. Win and they're in. That's the simplest one. Or, a lot going on here. They can lose as long as the Jags beat the Titans and win the AFC South. The Jets beat the Dolphins and the Browns beat the Steelers. So that's what they would need there's various tiebreakers at play there and such, but that's what they would need. There's very specific results if the Patriots lose. But the fact that we're sitting here and the Patriots don't even need to win the game and they can actually get into the playoffs at 8 and 9 is crazy to me. I feel like it doesn't happen unless they win the game, but who knows? The Dolphins wildcard scenario, meanwhile, is a little simpler. They need to win and they need the Patriots to lose to the Bills. That one's pretty realistic as well. Bills are going to be favored on paper by a good amount. And the Dolphins are facing the Jets, which that's a tough matchup, but still winnable. Jets, who knows how motivated they'll be. They're eliminated from the playoffs. Maybe they'll play looser. I don't know. You can spin it any way you want. But the big story here, I think, is the Dolphins are just limping to the finish line. Like, this was a team that you rewind 2 months ago, and people were like, Dolphins can make the Super Bowl. The Dolphins are a top 2 or 3 team in the AFC. But even in the NFL, you had RG3 saying they were the best team in the NFL at one point, and they have just tanked. I mean, what do you see for the Dolphins this week? Do you think that they can recover off of these injuries and just this downturn that they are on, or what do you expect from them?
I think that there's a good chance that they win this game, but it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be because their head coach goes out there and gets creative. That's what you're going to have to do. You need to get the ball in Waddle and Hill's hands. It's a little bit more difficult when you talk about you're now on your third quarterback, and in order to be able to be successful behind that offensive line, you got to get the ball off quick. That's just the way it is. Everybody knows that those guys are going to get home on the line. And that's tough to do when you're talking about a quarterback without that much experience, with that big of pressure for the game on the line, the season on the line. But man, I don't know what to make of the Dolphins. I will say that the Patriots did kind of luck out, but Mac Jones played well. The Patriots are starting to step up. I feel like the Patriots defense are the only reason why we're having this conversation right now. So I don't want to take too much away from them by saying that, oh, it's a third string quarterback who did this, blah, blah, blah. The Patriots defense has stepped up and they're the real deal.
Yeah, the Patriots defense absolutely stepped up. And I mean, that is what is going to have to happen if the Patriots are going to make the playoffs with their win and in scenario. I mean, look, the Bills are the better team on paper. We know this. They're going to have likely plenty to play for next week. Well, they are going to have something to play for the 1 seed in some way, shape, or form, regardless of what happens against the Bengals, which is happening after we record this. But they're going to have a lot to play for next week. There's not going to be any rest going on. Patriots defense is going to need to do more of this. Kyle Duggar is the only player in the NFL with 3 defensive touchdowns this year. Would love another one next week. That'd be super helpful, Kyle, because they're not going to be able to outgun the Bills strictly offensively. But you mentioned it. Mac Jones has actually played really well the last 2 weeks, and it's kind of propping up the defense a little bit because for the first time, it doesn't feel like they have to do everything. He's actually, keeping them off the field a little bit longer, being a little bit more efficient through the air on offense. And when you combine that with the elite defense that, especially this week, they were missing Jack Jones, Marcus Jones, and Jalen Mills, most of their starting secondary. You have Devin McCourty out there, who's a great player, but had an interception hit him right in the chest. You've got these things that it's like, if this team is operating at full throttle on defense and has all of their personnel, man, that is an elite defense. And if the offense can just do its part, I could see them upsetting the Bills. We'll talk about a little later who I actually think is going to make the wild card out of the AFC. I don't want to give it away. But look, I, as a fan, at the very least, will tell you I'm hopeful because I think that, the Bills, they may have one more little slip up in them this year. Like, I think the Patriots could maybe catch them off guard, make some plays on defense, and hopefully get them in. That's what I'm hoping for as a fan at the very least.
Well, and then you also have the chance of the Chiefs get beat tonight, somebody else has to win on Saturday. There's a chance, a very, very, very small chance that the Bills, McDermott decides to rest his starters and the Bills don't go out full flex because they're resting their starters. If right now they're playing for this number 1 seed, but if something happens and the Chiefs lose, then they have a little bit more leeway. There's an opportunity that happens. And if so, Patriots, that would be your lucky ticket.
It's tough because as we're sitting here recording this podcast, we don't know the game times, all of them. All we know right now is that Lions-Packers has been announced for Sunday Night Football. And then on Saturday, you've got, I believe it's Chiefs-Raiders. And then, Jags-Titans is on Saturday. So I guess, yeah, we do kind of know. If the Chiefs were to somehow lose to the Raiders on Saturday, and the Bills, assuming they take care of business tonight against the Bengals, I guess they would clinch the 1, right? So but they won't know if they clinch the 1 until this upcoming Saturday. But yeah, that is a possibility. So who knows? So many moving parts as we head into the last week of the season. But look, as Patriots fans, we are alive. That's all we can ask for. This season's been a mess. Matt Patricia needs to get the first ticket to Germany or wherever to get out of our hair after the season. We're alive. Heading into week 18, we have a playoff chance. That's all I can ask for because I did not think that would be the case as of a few weeks ago.
I'm so glad you followed that also because I definitely said the Chiefs, I think, tonight. I've been so deep into playoff scenarios that I literally dreamed about it last night. And then I dreamed that we were on this show. Dreams are crazy. I dreamed that we were on like a live show. It wasn't like this, but we were like live on TV talking about playoff scenarios. And we were just going through and they're like, guys, you got to cut it down. It's been a few hours. And we're like, well, we just got started.
We have to go through it. It's like the meme of the guy, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's at the board. It just has like yarn everywhere and he's pointing all different directions. And it's like Steve Kornacki, who's actually does playoff scenarios, which I think is awesome. But he's the guy that's known mainly for election night and going over all the states and all this stuff, the analytics. So that's how we feel. We feel insane going over this. Long story short is, again, just to say it again and clarify hopefully a little bit, if the Bills if you are listening to this podcast right now and the Bills have 13 wins, the Chiefs also have 13 wins. The Bills have the tiebreaker over the Chiefs. So if the Chiefs lose to the Raiders, which is unlikely, but if they do on Saturday, the Bills would not have a reason necessarily to play their starters on Sunday. That's where we're at with them. Going to kind of go over that again in a little bit, but regardless, just to clarify, keep things straight. Look, we are trying to educate the masses on this mess of playoff scenarios, and it's really not as bad as it could be. I've seen it worse in previous years. So just stick with us. Active listening, keep those ears open, and we'll try and run through it. One team I was hoping I wouldn't have to talk about today, and this actually annoyed me. I tweeted during the game, and I was like, I really want the Steelers to lose because I just don't want to have to talk about their potential path to the playoffs. And if they lost last night, it was over. We didn't have to talk about them. They were eliminated. Of course, they couldn't make it that easy on us, and they had to defeat the Ravens 16-13. So the Steelers wild card scenario now for the wizard that is Mike Tomlin, who apparently always gets his team at least on the verge of the playoffs, if not in. Their wild card scenario is they win versus the Browns in Week 18. The Bills beat the Patriots, and the Jets beat the Dolphins. Really not crazy at all. Like, none of that is crazy. I would argue that all of those outcomes are the favorite outcomes, actually, if assuming the Dolphins don't get Tua back. So it's not crazy. I'm astounded that the Steelers also are on the verge of the playoffs because I believe they were also 3-7 at one point, just like the Packers were. And now they're knocking on the door of the playoffs. You can't say enough about Mike Tomlin and even the steps that Kenny Pickett has taken forward to, not lose games for this team. It's been very impressive.
Yeah, with a rookie quarterback.
Right. Rookie quarterback from a weak draft class or so we thought. Maybe Kenny Pickett's the guy who's going to, prop that up a little bit, but it'll be interesting if he can get in the playoffs, what he can do. Jaguars, Texans. So Jaguars defeated the Texans 31-3. Jags are a little weirder here. So their division scenario for winning the AFC South is if they win, they are in. That's also the case for the Titans. Whoever wins that game is going to win the AFC South. Then you've got the wild card. So as we sit here, the disastrous division that is the AFC South that rivaled the NFC South overall in terms of incompetence, we could potentially have two AFC South teams get into the playoffs, and that makes me want to throw up. The scenario for that would be the Titans defeat the Jags, therefore the Titans would get the AFC South crown, and then the Bills beat the Patriots, the Jets beat the Dolphins, and the Browns beat the Steelers. So there's a lot that needs to fall in line for the Jaguars to lose and still make the playoffs, but there is a road for it to happen, and it's, again, not crazy unrealistic. We don't have a ton of big mismatches this week for the teams that are in playoff contention. So it's a lot of things that could swing either way. We don't have Dolphins versus Chiefs or something like that or anything like that. So there's a scenario two AFC South teams get in. All of that to say, Maddie, who do you think wins the AFC South? And who do you think gets the wild card spot? We've got Patriots, Dolphins, Jags, Steelers, and then, of course, the Titans also in this conversation. Who are we going to be seeing playing playoff football next week?
So I definitely think that the Jags are going to make it. I have the Jags winning the AFC South solely because they got hot at the right time. They haven't slowed down. They're efficient both in the air attack and the ground attack. And the Titans are, you mentioned earlier that we were talking about teams kind of stumbling in. They are driving their players in on an injury card. That's how ran through this team is. If you look at their depth chart, half of their team is gone. All of them are either injured reserved, or out. That's not even questionable. So I think that there's just no way the Jags don't win this game. So I have them in. And then wild card is either Patriots or Steelers. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards Steelers just because it's a more favorable outlook. But like I said, if something happens where the Bills slip up or they decide maybe we won't start all of our guys and give some people some rest, I think that there's a chance the Patriots could sneak in there too.
Yeah, so, I'm sitting here as a Patriots fan and my team having a playoff chance, and I am not going to be biased. I'm going to be honest. I'm with you. I think, first of all, I think the Jags win the AFC South. That just seems like an easy one to me. And then the Steelers, maybe it's not the most analytically inclined prediction just because they need a specific string of outcomes in order to get in, but it's the outcomes that I think are going to happen this week. Like if I were to pick every game this week, that's how I think it plays out. I think the Bills beat the Patriots, barring the rest situation that you mentioned. I think the Jets beat the shorthanded Dolphins. I feel like the Jets, yes, they're not playing for a playoff spot, but You've still got Mike White, who's going to be out with something to prove. See if he can convince the Jets to commit to him next year. He's still very much trying to prove himself at the NFL level. A team that's probably going to be pissed and isn't going to want to lose to a division rival and help them get in the playoffs. Like, they're going to probably be playing pretty hard regardless. So I think the Jets beat the Dolphins. And then Steelers-Browns, I mean, the Steelers are at home. The Browns aren't very good. They're stumbling as well. Deshaun Watson is still not looking the best. And the Steelers have just been taking care of business against a lot of teams as the season has gone on. So, I mean, you go back to they played the Saints several weeks back. That was kind of the first win on this like longer stretch of winning most of their games. They beat the Saints. They lost to the Bengals. They beat the Colts. They beat the Falcons. They lost to the Ravens. Then they beat the Panthers, the Raiders, and the Ravens. 3 straight wins. I just expect them to take care of business against the Browns with the playoffs on the line, a head coach like Mike Tomlin. I think the Steelers get in, and I think we're going to be sitting here with the last wild card teams in each conference being 2 teams that sat here with horrible records 2 months ago. But it's about getting hot at the right time. And Steelers, good for you guys winning that game, pulling that one out against the Ravens last night, because I was really hoping to not even have to talk about you guys today, and yet here I am predicting you to make the playoffs. So.
And that Steelers defense is one to be reckoned with. I mean, they really are incredible in their own right. And they were injured throughout the season. Like, some of those losses that you mentioned were due to their starting defenders being out. I cannot talk today. I feel like I'm having a stroke. But anyways, the defense is good. And also Minka is just, wow.
Yeah.
I have to get
that defense is definitely loaded, and Kenny Pickett keeps taking these steps forward. That offense is not the worst, it's good enough at times. So Steelers, I think you get into the playoff. The Steelers are one team that I will say I'm fairly confident will not win a game in the playoffs. But again, rookie quarterback, you just want to get their feet wet, right? Like, if you can get into the playoffs, get him that experience, and then it's not so overwhelming next year when they come in with possibly a more competitive and more dangerous team, you're in really good shape. So Steelers, let's see if you can finish it off.
Speaking of that rookie quarterback, I want to play one round of trivia with you.
Okay, sure.
I'm dropping this on you. I didn't tell you I was going to do this. Okay, Kenny Pickett has 3 fourth quarter comebacks this year, which is the most for a rookie quarterback since this quarterback in 2019. Who is the quarterback?
Oh, rookie quarterbacks 2019. Oh boy, I'm not going to know that. I'm not going to know the class of quarterbacks off the top of my. Is that the Burrow class?
He is. I'm going to give you a hint. He is not a starting quarterback at this moment, but he has started a couple of games recently.
Not a starting quarterback, but has started a couple of games recently. Who has started recently that got drafted in 19?
NFC. Oh.
Oh boy. All right, hold on. I'm gonna go down the NFC. I don't care if this is gonna be dead air of me listing these teams. It's not dead air, I guess. All right. NFC West, you got the Rams, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and I'm gonna forget a team now too.
Think North.
49ers, obviously. North? Okay. So,
wait.
We're struggling out here with the divisions. They're so easy when you have unlimited time. When you feel pressured by a podcast run time, you don't know.
I know. I just didn't want you to overthink it. Now I feel like I'm giving you too many hints. Would you like me to tell you?
I want to get off one guess. So we're in the North. We're in the North, or at least we were in the North. Yeah. Bears, Packers, Lions, Vikings.
So, okay, I feel like I threw you off there. The quarterback where he's at now does not play.
Okay, but he did. Just tell me. Who is it?
I was like, I don't want to get this way. Okay, Gardner Minshew.
Okay.
I was shocked by that. So I was like, wow.
He did come to mind when you said
I think I threw you off by
started games recently, but truthfully, I didn't know he was drafted in 19. I thought he was drafted before that. So that's part of where I would have been wrong. Regardless. But wow, that is kind of wild. So
wild stat. I don't know. I just thought that was fun. Go Kenny Pickett.
Good for Kenny Pickett and his tiny hands. Him and Gardner Minshew hang out together and make fourth quarter comebacks.
I have officially ruined my role as ever being a Jeopardy host, but that's okay.
It's all right. Aaron Rodgers has that locked up for after he retires, so don't worry about it. I'm sure you'll love that. You lost a job to Aaron Rodgers. All right. So you've got the teams fighting for the wild cards that we just went over. Now let's just quickly go over the teams at the top of each conference, right? So we got the fight for the 1 seeds. Try to break down these scenarios as well. The Eagles, they win and they're the 1 seed. Or if they lose and both the Cowboys and 49ers lose, they're also the 1 seed. I feel like that second scenario is not super likely because if the Eagles lose, one of those teams is probably going to win. But for Eagles, basically winning, they're the 1. 49ers, also simple for them. They need to win, and they need the Eagles to lose. And the 49ers would be the number 1 seed in the NFC and get that first round bye. The Cowboys win, and both Eagles and 49ers lose. That's how the Cowboys would get the 1 seed. And then just to quickly touch on the Vikings, because you might be sitting there thinking, oh, their record is the same as some of these other teams. The Vikings at 12-4 do not have a chance at the 1 seed because they lose the head-to-head tiebreaker with the 13-3 Eagles, who they cannot surpass, obviously, with only 1 week remaining in the season. So those are the scenarios for the 1 seeds in the NFC. In the AFC, I am going to try my best to break this down because, again, a lot of this will depend on a game that has not happened yet and is going to happen after we record this podcast, but I think I got a handle on it, so just stick with me. The Chiefs, simply put, they need to finish with a better record than both the Bills and the Bengals. They need a better record. Can I have the same? Because they don't have the tiebreaker over either of those teams. They lost to both of them this season. The Bills, if you are listening to this podcast and the Bills have beaten the Bengals, all the Bills need in Week 18 is a win or a Chiefs loss. If you're listening to this podcast and the Bills have lost to the Bengals, the Bills would need to win in Week 18 and for the Chiefs and Bengals to both lose. That covers that. As for the Bengals, if you're listening to this podcast and the Bills have beaten the Bengals are out of contention for the 1 seed. They cannot catch the Bills. They're out of contention. If you're listening to this and the Bengals have beaten the Bills would need to win in Week 18 versus the Ravens, and they would need the Chiefs to lose in Week 18 versus the Raiders, because, again, that would mean that after this week, the Bengals are 1 game back of the Chiefs, but if they catch them and have the same record, they hold the tiebreaker over the Chiefs. So that's where we're at with the 1 seeds. You have 3 teams in each conference in contention for it as of right now. There's a possibility, again, that as you're listening to this, the Bengals are no longer in contention for it, but that's where we sit as of 3:22 p.m. Mountain Time on this fine Monday. So hopefully you got that. Hopefully, if you're a fan of one of these teams, they can pull that out for you, but those are the scenarios. And Maddie, based on all that, I want your prediction on this as well. Who do you think gets the 1 seed in each conference? Because, again, the Eagles is tough, right? Because they've been having to play with Gardner Minshew. We don't know if they're going to have Jalen back this week, so it's getting interesting. One thing I will say before we do this is, man, Jalen Hurts' MVP case has probably gotten strengthened over these past couple of weeks, actually.
Yes. I keep hearing people still talking about Patrick Mahomes this, and I'm just like, maybe, but look how much the Eagles, like, I know that Lane Johnson, obviously, that was a big loss, but the Eagles have lost momentum. They've fallen hard without Jalen Hurts. I think that was a big conversation. Even the people talking crap on Tua, I think Tua now has a leg to stand on, saying that I make up just as much of the priority in this team as anyone else. But no, I kind of feel like Patrick Mahomes, he does that thing where sometimes he makes questionable decisions because he's trying to put too many things on his shoulders. I feel like, bear with me here, I think that the Bills get the number 1 seed in the AFC. I do. And I think the Eagles will pull out the NFC. I think that Jalen Hurts will play. I think that they need him to play. And I think that will buy them a little bit extra time with Lane being gone. So I think that they're going to go out and just say, Jalen's our best shot. Let's get this 1 so that way we have a little bit more of an advantage going into the playoffs.
That is fair. I'm trying to take a look at these Week 18 matchups for all these teams fighting for the 1 seed. So we've got the Eagles who are playing, they're playing the Giants who, again, they probably don't have much of a reason to play their own starters. So this is where Week 18 gets complicated. The Giants have clinched the playoffs. Jalen Hurts is really the X factor here. I think if Jalen plays, the Eagles will lock this up. But we don't know if that's going to happen. I'm going to conservatively say that Jalen Hurts will play and that the Eagles will win and get the 1 seed as well. And then in the AFC, I really want the Bills to lose to the Patriots. So, but I didn't predict that earlier when I was making my picks for the wild card. So I'm also going to go with the Bills get the 1 seed. I can't play both sides of the field here as much as I want to. I wanted to give it to the Chiefs, be like, Patriots will beat the Bills and suppress them, and the Chiefs take care of business against the Raiders. Now, I think the Bills get the 1 seed. So I think it will hold strong. And those will be the teams at the top of their conferences with the first round bye, which will make things very interesting with the Chiefs having to play in the first round. Not something we necessarily thought would happen. But again, last year the Titans were the 1 seed, I believe. So Chiefs are used to this at this point, despite being, arguably the best team in the AFC for a couple of years. They end up finding themselves having to play in this first weekend. So could be the case again. I
do have a hot take.
Absolutely.
I think the Chiefs are going to fall to the Raiders this weekend.
Really?
I
do.
You
think Jared Stidham and company are going to take down? First of all, let's give Stidham some credit here. Guy played like a monster. So
yes.
I don't know where that guy was hiding in New England when he was there.
We had better play calling. I sneaky feel like McDaniels was sabotaging Carr so that he had a scapegoat. Now we're at the end of the season, and here we go. We have a new quarterback first game in and just blows us away, honestly. Nobody expected that out of him.
Yeah, it feels very Geno Smith, doesn't it? I mean, an accelerated version of it where it's like this guy was just on the bench for years and literally never got an opportunity to start. And so you don't really know what he is. You just kind of assume he's bad. It's like if he wasn't bad, the Patriots would have gone with him over Cam Newton when they had him. Jared Stidham had a couple of months where he looked like the clear Patriots starter for that upcoming season. And then they went out and got washed up Cam Newton instead. So it's very weird, but I'm happy for Jared Stidham. I do wonder where this guy has been, because I'll tell you my lasting memory of Jared Stidham. I was in a Buffalo Wild Wings during the Patriots-Jets game in 2019. The Patriots were up 30-7. They brought in Jared Stidham for mop-up duty, immediately threw a pick six, and they had to bring Brady back in the next drive because they're like, we're not playing. Like, there was still enough time in the game that another defensive touchdown and it starts to get interesting. So that was my last memory, was you couldn't even come in and do mop up duty and do the bare minimum. Like, you could have gone 3 and out and we'd be okay with it, but he got pick six.
The big thing for me is the fact that the 49ers didn't get 1 sack. Are you kidding me? That's it's arguably the best defense in the league right now. Didn't even get home to him. And to be honest with you, all he has to do is just throw it up, and Devontae Adams is going to find the ball and bring it down. He just has to throw a Hail Mary and get it up there, which you can do on the Chiefs defense. I think that the Chiefs are going to sleep on the Raiders, and I think that they're going to get beat.
Man, that would be something. I mean, and that also – here's where I get conflicted with these like late season quarterback changes is Jared Stidham goes out there and balls out again. It's like, okay, this seems like a good thing for the Raiders, but is it? Because now you have complicated your future so much, because we would have all just assumed going into the offseason, like, okay, they don't have a quarterback, they got to find one. Now you're going to have fans and media being like, well, is it Jared Stidham? You may have the Raiders themselves being like, do we stick with Jared Stidham? And then your worst case scenario is you go into next year, maybe you do go with Jared Stidham and he sucks because he's the original Jared Stidham, and this was just kind of a flash in the pan. It's just funny to me how this can happen late in the season. You find these possible diamonds in the rough, but you don't have enough of a sample size to know whether that's what they truly are or not. We'll get to the viewer questions now. One of them actually involves Stidham, so we'll talk about him again in a second. But what should Washington do in the offseason? I think they should clean house, get another new name, and draft a quarterback. This question coming from Marcus Lacados. Hopefully I got that right. So this is an interesting one. The Commanders came in to this past week still with a playoff chance, and yet Ron Rivera decided, you know what? Let's start Carson Wentz. Okay, let's start Carson Wentz. Went for 150 some odd yards and three interceptions. Commanders are no longer in playoff contention because they got bodied. So questionable decisions from the Commanders. Maddie, how drastic of changes do you think they need to make this offseason? Do you envision new quarterback, new coach, both? What do you see?
Honestly, both. But what the issue that we're facing is we don't even know what's happening with ownership right now. We don't know is Dan Snyder going to be there? Who is going to be making the decision on if they keep Ron Rivera, if they get rid of him? A lot of fans are pissed off at the fact that he didn't even know if the Packers won. That means that they were out. There's just a lot of issues there, obviously. I didn't agree with the go ahead with Wentz start. We know who Wentz is. I do think that they definitely need a quarterback, but that gets a little bit sticky because I also feel like they need a new head coach. And what comes first when your ownership's all over the place? It's kind of like there's such a dumpster fire that it's almost like get your shit together and we'll talk about you in 2024.
Yeah, and it's wild too because you add to the dumpster fire by their record was good this year, relatively speaking. So they're going to find themselves in the middle of the draft, nowhere near the top of it. So they're not positioned to draft a quarterback or anything like that. So it's tough to think about what their future holds. I do think that they're probably going to get rid of Ron. And I think Carson Wentz is gone. So they can cut him for $0 dead cap. And he is off their hands. I expect that to be the case because they're not going to keep this guy on their roster for the $27 million cap it. Look, maybe they restructure, maybe they keep him on for 10, 11, 12 million, whatever, something like that. But I feel like wipe your hands clean. This guy doesn't even deserve to be a backup, at least not in Washington. So they need to go and find themselves a quarterback, whether that is Derek Carr, Jimmy G, all these guys that we know and think will be available this offseason. I don't know, but I don't think they can draft one because they won't be in position to. I don't think they'll get another new name as much as maybe they should because I do think their name kind of sucks. But cleaning house, probably going to happen. This team is just in one of the worst spots in the NFL from the top down. And I think it's funny that it is amplified by they got too many wins this year and they have nothing to show for it except a worse draft position. So that's where the Commanders are at this point. I don't know what their problem is with Taylor Heineke. I know he's not great and I don't think he's a long-term answer, but why go away from him when you were in the middle of fighting for the playoff? They're going to regret that. They probably already do, especially Ron Rivera. So next question. Again, we talked about it a little bit, but is Stidham QB1 in Vegas from now on? Maddie, what do you expect for the Las Vegas Raiders at the quarterback position? Because we know Derek Carr's gone. So are they going to go and get somebody else to maybe compete with Stidham? Is Stidham just a high upside backup? What do you make of this performance that he had and what they should do now going forward?
I think he's a high upside backup. I think McDaniels already has his eye on another quarterback. Like I said, I sneaky feel like this was kind of his plan, is to almost sabotage Carr a little bit. I don't know that it was that vindictive, but I think he's smart enough to know, like, okay, we need to go out and I need to get the attention off of me. I need people to stop talking about me and let's talk about the quarterback position. I think that he'll probably have somebody he's comfortable with or he feels like has a high upside that he wants to bring in. So I feel like Stidham's there, but maybe as a QB2.
Yeah, it's just tough to picture for the Raiders what their realistic options are, quarterback too. Because you've got, we threw around the idea of a Tom Brady reunion with Josh McDaniels, right, in Las Vegas. And I don't think that's completely off the table either. Because if you remember as well, there was that whole controversy when Brady first signed with the Bucs that it was like, there were some teams in on it at the end, and that Brady's reaction to that team backing out was, oh, you're sticking with that fucking guy? And the heavy rumor was that he was referring to Derek Carr with the Raiders. So what a full circle moment it would be if he ultimately replaced Derek Carr, even though the coaching situation and everything else has changed since then. But I would not be super shocked if that was where he ended up. And you look around, I'm trying to think of quarterbacks other than Jimmy and anyone who's going to be available that's going to be worth a starting spot in Las Vegas. Because, again, they're not going to get one in the draft. And the free agent crop of quarterbacks, I don't believe is anything special. So maybe they can go get Carson Wentz. They could have fun with him.
Can you imagine if there was an Adams why can I not talk today? Aaron Rodgers reunion?
Oh, man. The reunion in Las Vegas or a reunion in Green Bay. Either way. I've seen it both ways. Where they trade him back to Green Bay for Jordan Love. So that's a possibility. Let me look up. I'm looking up the free agent quarterbacks really quick just to get a full list. All right, so we've got Brady. You got Baker Mayfield. You got Sam Darnold, Jimmy, Teddy B, Daniel Jones as of right now. And then, you just got a bunch of other, no names other than Lamar Jackson. But I don't think either of us really expect him to for Baltimore to let him go. So yeah, no other clear options that are like a major upgrade over Jared Stidham. If Jared Stidham can at least perform at this halfway decent level, because I don't think you're going to look at like, oh, let's sign Baker Mayfield, let's sign Sam Darnold, let's sign Teddy. At that point, just stick with Stidham. So it'll be interesting.
One more thing to add on to the rumor about Brady possibly ending up in Vegas is there was rumors around the time that the only reason that was counted out in the first place was because Giselle didn't want the kids being raised in Las Vegas or in Nevada. Okay. And that was a big thing. Now that there's a divorce situation, I don't know what they have lined up with the kids, but that's not a too far of a situation that he couldn't make work. So who knows? Yeah,
it's a weird quarterback situation in the sense that, the rest of that roster is at least designed to win. Like they're trying to put together a winning team right now. This is not a blow everything up, get rid of Derek Carr thing. Maybe it turns into that if they can't find a quarterback and you do trade Devontae for something or whatever. But, with a head coach that they just signed, I don't see this team going into like tank mode. So I don't know. Keep an eye on Brady. Keep an eye on Brady to Vegas. Who knows? Maybe that materializes. And man, Brady to Devontae Adams. Sign me up for that as well. Very much interested in that. And final question, a little bit of a different note. Tips for when your fantasy league manager makes the championship week 18 from Sam Mullen. Sam, my tip for you, leave that league.
Yeah, I was about to say, your manager hates you.
Exit that league or start a petition to fix that. Guys, if you're listening to this and your league plays its fantasy championship in week 18, please do us all a favor and enter the 21st century with the rest of us.
Yeah.
We know that week 18 breeds chaos in the form of resting starters, guys who we aren't sure if they're going to rest, which is even worse. Like there's situations where, I'm not going to have Josh Allen and that sucks. But then you go into games where it's like, well, they kind of have something to play for. So do I start the guy? And then he ends up playing the first drive and going out. It's a mess. We need to avoid week 18. So either petition them to change it or, leave the league. As far as dealing with it this very week, pray. Not really sure what else I could tell you.
And also get sneaky. I always say go pick up players that you think whoever your opponent's going to be, that they may be interested in. Just like snatch them up as soon as possible. Just try to be proactive about taking away people's options because that's when people start overthinking and make it worse. But this is just a poop situation. Tell them that Maddie and Bran said that this is not right and next year it needs to change.
Needs to change. Enough is enough, and it's time for a change, Sam, because if this goes on, I don't know. But all right, that is all of our topics for this week on Off the Bench. I do want to quickly run through just what Maddie and I think is going to end up being the playoff teams. So again, in the AFC, clinched are the Bills, Bengals, Ravens, Chiefs, and Chargers. We both believe that the teams that will fill out the playoffs in the AFC are the Jaguars winning the AFC South and the Steelers backdooring their way into that final wild card spot. Then you've got the NFC. The teams that have clinched are the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Vikings, the Bucs, and the 49ers. And we also both believe that the Green Bay Packers will slide into that 7 seed, complete their major turnaround that they've had here in the second half of the season after having just an awful record and looking incompetent for a long time. Keyshawn Nixon, shout out, you're the guy. So the Packers will get that spot. And we also believe that the 1 seeds in each conference will hold with the Eagles and the Bills getting the first round bye. Let's see if we're right. Hopefully we are psychic and we come back next week and we don't have to eat any crow, or we could just be like, I don't even know why you guys watched the games this week. We told you what was going to happen. It's obvious. So that's where we're at with the playoff scenarios. Maddie, any final thoughts?
No, good luck to everybody. And I'm excited to see where we ended up on our predictions next week.
Me too. And truthfully, I hope I'm extremely wrong because I hope the New England Patriots take down the Buffalo Bills, get into the playoffs, make it to the Super Bowl, face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, take down Tom Brady and show him he should have never left New England. That's what I want, and that's what I'll dream about because it's not going to happen in reality. But that's where we're at. So thank you guys for listening. As always, good luck to your teams if they're still in contention. For Maddie Kroll, I'm Brandon Carney, and we'll see you next time.